I spent 15 years getting women completely wrong. Not because I was unintelligent, not because I lacked experience, but because everything I thought I knew about women was built on lies. Lies from movies that showed romance as a straightforward transaction. Lies from friends who understood women even less than I did. Lies from a culture that pretends men and women think identically when every piece of evidence screams otherwise. At 32, I sat alone in my apartment after my third serious relationship ended in confusion. She said I never understood her. I thought I understood her perfectly. We were looking at the same relationship and seeing entirely different realities. That night, I made a decision that changed my life. I would stop assuming I knew anything about women. I would study them the way a scientist studies a new species, without judgment, without projection, without filtering everything through my male experience. I read psychology, Jung, Freud, modern evolutionary research. I observed women in my life with fresh eyes. I asked questions I had never thought to ask. I listened to answers I had always dismissed. What I discovered shattered everything I believed. Women do not think like men with different bodies. They process reality through fundamentally different psychological architecture. Their fears are different. Their desires are different. Their communication operates on entirely different principles. Robert Greene wrote that most people are locked in their own worlds, making them stubborn and hard to persuade. To influence them, you must understand their individual psychology. But to understand any individual woman, you must first understand female psychology as a whole. That is what I am giving you today. Not tricks, not manipulation tactics. The foundational understanding that makes everything else make sense. This is everything you should know about women. And most men will live their entire lives without learning any of it. Welcome back to the Shadow Mind. Let me be clear about what this video is and what it is not. This is not a guide to manipulating women. This is not a claim that all women are identical. This is not ammunition for resentment or cynicism. This is a map, a psychological map of patterns that appear consistently across female experience. Patterns rooted in biology, evolution, and the deep structures of the feminine psyche. Carl Jung spent his career studying the collective unconscious, the shared psychological inheritance that shapes human experience beneath individual variation. He identified archetypes, universal patterns that appear across cultures and throughout history. The feminine psyche contains specific archetypes that influence how women perceive, feel, and respond to the world. Understanding these archetypes does not reduce women to stereotypes. It illuminates the deep currents beneath individual expression. Sigmund Freud understood that the unconscious mind drives most human behavior. We construct rational explanations for actions that originate in places we cannot see. This applies to both sexes, but the unconscious content differs. What drives female behavior often remains invisible to men because we project our own psychology onto them. We assume they want what we want, fear what we fear, value what we value. This projection creates endless confusion, endless failed relationships, endless frustration on both sides. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Most men cannot see beyond their male psychology. They believe their experience is universal. They are blind to an entire dimension of human existence. Today, I am expanding your field of vision. I will cover the core principles of female psychology. How women experience security differently than men. Why emotional communication operates by different rules. What women actually evaluate when they assess a man. How female desire functions. And why understanding these things transforms every interaction you will ever have. I have organized female psychology into 5 core principles. Principle 1 is security as foundation. How safety needs shape female perception and behavior. Principle 2 is emotional reality. How women process and communicate through feeling. Principle 3 is evaluation hierarchy. What women actually assess when measuring a man's value. Principle 4 is desire dynamics. How female attraction operates differently from male attraction. Principle 5 is communication layers. How women speak on multiple levels simultaneously. Each principle builds understanding that the others depend upon. Miss one, and you will misinterpret everything that follows. Machiavelli wrote that whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past. Female psychology was not invented yesterday. It was shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, by thousands of years of cultural development, by the specific challenges women faced that men did not. When you understand the past that created female psychology, you can foresee how women will respond in the future. Not perfectly, not with every individual, but with enough accuracy to transform your understanding. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that there are no facts, only interpretations. Most men interpret female behavior through male psychology and get everything wrong. Today, you learn to interpret correctly. Stay with me through these 20 minutes. The understanding you gain will serve you for the rest of your life. Let us begin. Principle 1. Security as foundation. If you understand nothing else about women, understand this. Security is not one of many needs for women. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without security, nothing else matters. With security, everything else becomes possible. Most men do not grasp how deeply this runs. For men, security is important, but not primary. We can tolerate significant uncertainty if other needs are met. Adventure, challenge, even danger can feel attractive to us. We often choose risk over safety when the potential reward seems worthwhile. Women are wired differently. Thomas Hobbes wrote about the state of nature as a condition of constant vulnerability. For most of human history, women lived in that state. Physically smaller, responsible for children, dependent on others for protection during pregnancy and nursing. The women who did not prioritize security did not survive to pass on their genes. This is not cultural conditioning. This is evolutionary architecture built over millions of years. Let me show you how this manifests in modern relationships. A woman meets a man. He is exciting, spontaneous, unpredictable. She feels attracted to the thrill he provides. But as time passes, something shifts. The same unpredictability that once excited her begins to create anxiety. She starts asking questions she did not ask before. Where is this going? What are we? Can I count on you? Most men interpret this as her trying to trap them, as her being needy or controlling, as her ruining something that was working fine. They are wrong. She is not trying to trap him. She is trying to establish security. Because without that foundation, her nervous system cannot relax. Her attraction cannot deepen. Her surrender cannot happen. Carl Jung identified that the feminine psyche seeks containment, not imprisonment. Containment. A safe space within which she can fully express herself. Without that container, she remains guarded, partial, unable to give herself completely. I learned this lesson painfully. In my 20s, I prided myself on being unpredictable. I thought spontaneity was attractive. I resisted defining relationships because I believed mystery was magnetic. I kept women guessing because I thought that maintained their interest. I lost woman after woman, not because they stopped being attracted to me, but because they could not build anything on the shifting sand I offered. Their security needs went unmet, and eventually They left to find someone who could provide what I would not. Robert Greene wrote about the importance of creating a sense of security before attempting seduction. He observed that people cannot open themselves to pleasure while feeling threatened. The mind must relax before the heart can engage. Here is what this means practically. When a woman asks where the relationship is going, she is not attacking your freedom. She is seeking security. When she wants to know your intentions, she is not being demanding. She is establishing foundation. When she needs reassurance during uncertainty, she is not being weak. She is being female. The man who understands this does not resent her security needs. He meets them, not through empty words, but through consistent behavior, through reliability, through being someone she can count on. This does not mean becoming boring or predictable in negative ways. It means providing emotional stability while maintaining other attractive qualities. The combination is irresistible because it is so rare. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being like a rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. That is what she needs you to be, the unmoved point around which her emotional waves can safely crash. Security is not a cage you provide. It is a foundation you build. And on that foundation, everything else becomes possible. Principle 2. Emotional reality. Here is something that will transform how you communicate with women. For women, emotions are not just feelings. They are information. They are reality. They are the primary way the world is processed and understood. Men tend to experience emotions as separate from facts. We feel something, then we analyze whether the feeling matches objective reality. If it does not match, we often dismiss the feeling as irrational. Women integrate emotion and reality more completely. How she feels about something is part of what that something is. The feeling is not separate from the fact. The feeling is information about the fact that has equal or greater weight than logical analysis. Sigmund Freud identified that the unconscious communicates through emotion. Feelings arise from places deeper than conscious thought. They carry information that logic cannot access. Women are generally more attuned to this unconscious communication. Let me show you how this creates conflict. A woman comes home upset about an interaction with a coworker. She describes what happened. To you, it sounds minor. A small comment that seems meaningless. You tell her she is overreacting. You explain logically why the comment was not a big deal. You try to help by putting things in rational perspective. She becomes more upset, not less. Now she is angry at you. What happened? You invalidated her emotional reality. You told her that her feelings were wrong, that her information was inaccurate, that her experience of the world was mistaken. From her perspective, you did not help. You dismissed her. You told her she could not trust her own perceptions. You made her feel alone with her experience. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that compassion is the basis of morality. True compassion with women requires accepting their emotional reality as valid even when it differs from your logical assessment. This does not mean agreeing that her interpretation is factually correct. It means acknowledging that her emotional experience is real and worthy of respect. Carl Jung understood that feeling is a rational function, not irrational, a different kind of rationality. It evaluates based on value rather than logic, good or bad rather than true or false. This evaluation is not inferior to thinking. It is complementary. Here is what effective emotional communication looks like. Instead of telling her the coworker comment was not a big deal, try this. That sounds frustrating. What about it bothered you most? Instead of explaining why her feelings are irrational, try this. I can see this really affected you. Tell me more about what you are experiencing. Instead of solving the problem logically, try this. I understand why you would feel that way. That makes sense. Notice what these responses do. They validate her emotional reality. They invite deeper expression. They communicate that her feelings are worthy of attention. This does not mean you cannot eventually offer perspective. But validation must come first. She cannot hear your logic until she feels emotionally received. Jordan Peterson speaks about the importance of listening. He says that if you listen to someone properly, they will tell you things they do not even know they know. When you receive a woman's emotional communication without judgment, she opens, she reveals, she connects. I spent years arguing with women's emotions, trying to correct them, trying to fix them, trying to make them more logical. Every argument pushed us further apart. When I learned to receive emotional reality without resistance, everything changed. Conversations that once became fights now became connections. Women who once felt misunderstood now felt seen. Robert Greene wrote that empathy is the most powerful tool of influence. True empathy with women requires entering their emotional reality rather than trying to drag them into your logical one. This is not weakness. This is understanding. And understanding is power. Principle 3. Evaluation. Hierarchy. Most men believe women evaluate them the same way men evaluate women. They are catastrophically wrong. When a man sees a woman, his evaluation is relatively simple. Physical attraction happens in milliseconds. Within seconds, he knows whether he is interested. The evaluation is primarily visual, immediate, and binary. Female evaluation operates on entirely different principles. Women assess men through a complex hierarchy that unfolds over time. Physical appearance matters, but it is one factor among many, and not necessarily the most important one. Let me reveal the hierarchy. Robert Greene observed that what distinguishes those who attract from those who repel is not beauty, but a psychological quality. He identified that confidence, purpose, and self-possession create attraction more reliably than physical features. This matches what I have observed consistently. The female evaluation hierarchy contains 5 levels. Level 1. Physical presence. This is not just appearance. It includes how you carry yourself, your posture, your movement, your grooming, the energy you project before speaking. Women notice these things instantly, but they do not determine everything. They open or close the door to further evaluation. Level 2. Social proof. How do others respond to you? Do people respect you? Do other women find you attractive? Do men treat you as someone who matters? Women are highly attuned to social signals because, throughout history, a man's social standing directly impacted the survival prospects of his partner and children. Level 3. Emotional stability. Can you regulate yourself? Do you remain calm under pressure? Do you react predictably to challenges? This connects directly to the security principle we discussed. An emotionally unstable man is a security threat regardless of his other qualities. Level 4. Resource capability. Not necessarily current wealth, but the capacity to provide and protect. Ambition matters here. Direction matters. The sense that you are building something matters. A man with limited resources but clear purpose often evaluates higher than a wealthy man without direction. Level 5. Character depth. Who are you beneath the surface? What do you stand for? How do you treat people who can do nothing for you? This level takes time to evaluate. It requires sustained interaction, but it carries enormous weight in her final assessment. Carl Jung wrote about the persona, the mask we present to the world. Women are skilled at seeing behind the persona. They evaluate not just what you show, but what you hide. Incongruence between your presentation and your reality registers as threat. Here is something critical to understand. These levels interact dynamically. Strength in one can compensate for weakness in another. A man with average physical presence, but exceptional emotional stability and clear purpose, can evaluate higher than a handsome man who lacks those qualities. But there is a threshold on each level. Fall below the threshold, and you are eliminated from consideration regardless of your strengths elsewhere. Machiavelli wrote that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Similarly, a woman estimates a man partly by observing who respects him and who dismisses him. Your social world is evidence she uses in her evaluation. I once watched a friend transform his dating life without changing his appearance at all. He had struggled for years. Average looking. Limited success. He assumed his face was the problem. Then he got promoted. His confidence increased. His social circle expanded. His sense of purpose clarified. His emotional stability improved because he felt more secure in himself. Within months, women responded to him completely differently. Same face, same body, different evaluation. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. The man who has reclaimed himself, who stands fully in his own identity, evaluates higher than the man who has shrunk himself to fit expectations. Women are not evaluating whether you meet some universal standard of attractiveness. They are evaluating whether you meet the threshold on each level of the hierarchy. And much of that evaluation concerns qualities you can develop. This is profoundly good news. You cannot change your bone structure, but you can change your posture, your emotional regulation, your social world, your sense of purpose, and your character. These changes alter how you evaluate in female assessment. Principle 4. Desire dynamics. Male desire is like a light switch. On or off. Present or absent. Triggered quickly. Experienced immediately. Directed toward the physical. Female desire is like a volume dial. It increases gradually, builds through layers, and involves far more than the physical. Understanding this difference is essential. Sigmund Freud studied libido extensively. He identified that female sexuality involves more psychological complexity than male sexuality. The physical and emotional are less separable. The context matters more. The build-up carries more weight than the act itself. Let me illustrate with a pattern I have observed countless times. A man meets a woman. He is attracted immediately. He wants her physically. He pursues that physical connection directly. She is not unattracted, but she is not ready. Her desire has not built to that level yet. His direct pursuit feels like pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Resistance kills the gradual building that her desire requires. He interprets her resistance as rejection. He either pushes harder, which increases her resistance, or he withdraws, which stops the building entirely. Both responses fail because he does not understand desire dynamics. Robert Greene wrote that seduction is a process that occurs over time. The longer you take, and the slower you go, the deeper you will penetrate into the mind of your target. This principle applies directly to female desire. Her desire builds through anticipation, through tension that increases gradually, through emotional connection that precedes physical connection, through safety that allows surrender. Carl Jung identified the feminine principle as receptive rather than aggressive. This does not mean passive. It means that the feminine opens to receive rather than reaching to take. Creating the conditions for that opening is entirely different from directly pursuing what you want. Here is what builds female desire. Emotional engagement builds desire. Conversations that go beneath the surface. Moments of genuine connection. The experience of being truly seen and understood. These create openings that physical pursuit cannot. Anticipation builds desire. The space between interactions. The wondering what will happen next. The tension of unfulfilled possibility. Rushing eliminates anticipation. Patience creates it. Safety builds desire. Not safety as boredom, but safety as permission. When she feels safe, she can surrender to sensation. When she feels unsafe, her body remains guarded regardless of her conscious intentions. Polarity builds desire. The felt difference between masculine and feminine energy. Your groundedness against her fluidity. Your strength against her softness. Your direction against her responsiveness. When polarity is strong, desire has somewhere to flow. Nietzsche wrote about the eternal recurrence and living in a way worthy of repetition. In desire dynamics, the experience of building desire is often more pleasurable than the release. Women intuitively understand this. Men often miss it entirely. I destroyed countless opportunities by rushing. I felt desire and expressed it directly. I pushed for physical connection before emotional connection was established. I interpreted her slowness as rejection rather than rhythm. When I learned to match female desire dynamics, everything transformed. I learned to build rather than grab, to invite rather than pursue, to create space rather than fill it, to let anticipation do work that pressure never could. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that desire is the essence of man, but the nature of desire differs between sexes. Aligning with female desire dynamics rather than imposing male desire dynamics is the difference between attraction and repulsion. She wants to desire you. She wants her desire to build and intensify and eventually overflow. But that building requires conditions that direct pursuit destroys. Create the conditions. The desire will follow. Principle 5. Communication layers. This principle will save you from countless misunderstandings. When a woman speaks, she is often communicating on multiple levels simultaneously. There is the literal content of her words. There is the emotional subtext beneath those words. And there is the relational message about the connection itself. Men typically hear only the first level. They respond to literal content and miss everything else. This creates the experience women describe constantly. He does not understand me. He does not listen. He does not get it. She is right. He does not get it. Because he is only hearing 1/3 of what she is actually saying. Carl Jung wrote about the symbolic function of the psyche. The unconscious communicates through symbol and association rather than direct statement. Female communication often carries this symbolic layer more prominently than male communication. Let me give you a concrete example. She says, "You never take me anywhere nice anymore." The literal content is about restaurants or entertainment venues. Most men respond to this level. They defend themselves. "We went to that nice place last month." They argue about facts. They miss the point entirely. The emotional subtext is about feeling valued. She feels like a low priority. She feels like the effort you once made has disappeared. She feels taken for granted. The relational message is about the connection itself. She is saying, "I am worried about us. I am worried the romance is dying. I need to know you still care enough to try." If you respond only to the literal content, you fail on both other levels. You leave her emotional reality unaddressed. You ignore the relational concern entirely. The conversation goes nowhere. She feels more misunderstood than before she spoke. Robert Greene observed that people never say exactly what they feel. You must learn to read between the lines. With women, reading between the lines is not optional. It is essential. Sigmund Freud built his entire therapeutic method on listening beneath surface content. He understood that what people say directly often masks what they mean indirectly. The skill of listening beneath the surface transfers directly to understanding women. Here is how to hear all three layers. First, receive the literal content without immediate response. Do not jump to defense or solution. Just receive. Second, ask yourself what emotion might be beneath these words. What feeling would generate this particular statement? Fear, sadness, frustration, loneliness. Third, ask yourself what this says about how she experiences the relationship. What concern about the connection itself might be driving this communication? When you respond, address all three layers. Not necessarily explicitly, but your response should acknowledge literal content, validate emotional subtext, and reassure the relational concern. For the restaurant example, an effective response might be, "You are right. I have not been putting in the effort I used to. I have been distracted with work, and I have let that affect how I show up for us. Let me plan something special this weekend." Notice what this response does. It acknowledges the literal content without arguing. It validates the emotional subtext by admitting to reduced effort. It addresses the relational concern by committing to change. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that the difficulty in life is not making decisions but understanding situations correctly. With women, understanding the situation correctly requires hearing all three communication layers. I spent years responding only to literal content. I argued about facts when she was expressing feelings. I solved surface problems while deeper concerns went unaddressed. I won debates while losing connection. When I learned to hear the layers, conversations transformed. What once became arguments now became opportunities for deeper understanding. What once created distance now created intimacy. Machiavelli wrote that one must be a fox to recognize traps. In communication, the trap is responding only to what is literally said. The fox hears what is actually meant. Train yourself to hear beneath words. It will transform every relationship you have. Now, let me bring all 5 principles together. Security as foundation. Emotional reality. Evaluation, hierarchy. Desire dynamics. Communication layers. These are not separate ideas. They are interconnected aspects of a unified psychological system. Each principle influences and reinforces the others. Her need for security shapes how she evaluates you. Her emotional reality determines how she experiences your communication. The evaluation hierarchy connects to her desire dynamics. The communication layers reveal all of these operating simultaneously. When you understand the system as a whole, individual behaviors make sense. What seemed irrational becomes logical within her psychological framework. What seemed confusing becomes clear when viewed through the correct lens. Robert Greene wrote that the key to power is the ability to judge who is best able to further your interests in all situations. The key to understanding women is recognizing that their psychology operates coherently within its own logic. Your task is learning that logic. Let me show you how integration works in practice. A woman you are dating becomes distant after a period of closeness. She gives short answers. She seems less interested. Most men panic or pursue. But you understand the principles. Her security needs may have been triggered. Perhaps the closeness itself created vulnerability she is not ready for. Her emotional reality is processing something beneath conscious awareness. Perhaps fear of abandonment. Perhaps past wounds activating. Her evaluation of you is ongoing. She is watching how you handle this moment. Do you become desperate? Do you become angry? Do you remain stable? Her desire dynamics require space for building. Chasing her during withdrawal creates pressure that kills desire. Giving space while remaining warm allows building to continue. Her communication is layered. The surface behavior says distance. The emotional subtext may be testing your stability. The relational message may be asking if you are safe to fall for. When you see all 5 principles operating simultaneously, your response becomes clear. You give space without abandoning. You remain warm without pursuing. You demonstrate stability through non-reactivity. You communicate through your behavior that her withdrawal does not shake you. This response addresses all 5 principles simultaneously. It meets her security need by demonstrating you are stable. It respects her emotional reality by not demanding she explain or change. It passes her evaluation by showing strength under pressure. It aligns with desire dynamics by allowing rather than forcing. It responds to all layers of her communication. Carl Jung wrote that the meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you meet female psychology with understanding rather than confusion, transformation becomes possible. Nietzsche wrote that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Understanding female psychology is not about fighting women. It is about ending the battle that ignorance creates. When you understand, there is nothing to fight. Let me leave you with a final truth. Women are not puzzles to be solved. They are human beings operating according to psychological principles you can learn to understand. This understanding does not give you power over women. It gives you power over your own confusion. It ends the frustration that comes from expecting female psychology to match male psychology. It creates the foundation for genuine connection. Marcus Aurelius wrote that everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is perspective, not truth. Your previous perspective on women was limited by your male psychology. Today, you gained a new perspective, a broader view, a more complete picture. Use this understanding with respect. Women are not enemies to be defeated. They are potential partners to be understood. The man who understands creates connection. The man who manipulates creates damage. Thomas Hobbes wrote that knowledge is power. Knowledge of female psychology is power to connect, to communicate, to build relationships that satisfy both people. Use that power wisely. This video gave you foundations, the principles that make sense of everything else. Return to these ideas when you are confused. They will illuminate what seems dark. If this understanding has shifted something in you, subscribe to the Shadow Mind. Every video here builds on these foundations. Every piece of content deepens your understanding of human psychology. Leave a comment below. Tell me which principle was most eye-opening for you. Your reflection might help another man begin his own journey toward understanding. And remember the truth beneath everything I shared today. She is not irrational. She is operating by different logic. Learn her logic. Everything changes. I will see you in the next video.